Welcome to the podcast about venture capital, where investors and founders alike can learn how VCs make decisions and reach conviction. Your host is Nick Moran, and this is The Full Ratchet.
Welcome back to The Full Ratchet. On today's special segment of Investor Stories, the investors address trends, sectors, and markets that they think are positioned for outsized returns in the future. This is the segment called What's Next? On today's special segment, we have Brian O'Malley of Forerunner. Brian, can you talk about sectors or trends that you're bullish on?
Yeah, I mentioned a few of these earlier. Like we really see the consumer taking the planet and taking the challenges around the planet more seriously. And a lot of this is actually being driven by individuals, kids, where they come home and they're just like, not okay, not composting anymore. And I didn't ask you, do you have kids or?
I have one, he's 5.
Okay, so he's just getting to the point, but like getting shade from your child about not taking care of the planet is a pretty good motivator for doing things differently. And so I think families are taking the sustainability movement more seriously, especially with gas prices going up. It's becoming, more relevant from an expense perspective as well. And so we're spending a lot of time trying to figure out, which solutions are ready for prime time today and which solutions look great on paper, but, aren't necessarily going to happen without government regulation or people getting a windfall of cash. That's an important thesis for us. I mentioned before this reinvention of Main Street. I think there's so much local commerce which still operates in an analog world that just seems silly at this point, that it is not a new trend or anything that's particularly sexy, but it's about helping real businesses, real infrastructure that we rely on a daily basis, be able to move online and run more efficient practices so they can acquire customers, they can operate more efficiently, they can access capital in ways that almost seem secondary if you think about all these creator economy businesses. But, the local business that you're already using and already have a relationship with is not necessarily adopting some of these technologies. Those have been the two that I've been spending most time with recently, but it ebbs and flows.
On today's special segment, we have Ravi Viswanathan of New View Capital. Ravi, can you talk about sectors or trends that you're bullish on?
I think just B2B software, we still think we're in the early innings, even though it's been 20 years since really Salesforce. Whether it's vertical SaaS, certain industries, a lot of the fintech investment, you could say it's vertical SaaS and financial services. So I think that's still a very big area. We play heavily at the application layer, also at the infrastructure layer. Any of these engagement platforms that we're really excited about. In fintech, we're very much infrastructure B2B house. We just have seen a lot. We also have partners that were practitioners. They worked at big banks and they worked at big fintech companies that really knows these products. We can assess them pretty quickly. I'd mentioned B2B payments. When I did Venmo Braintree, this was a decade ago, that was B2C payments. Even then it was over 50%. There was a digital alternative, right? And the B2B payment side, it's 2%. It's still ACH and check. And so that market is so underpenetrated. We've got several bets in that space. Companies like Modern Treasury and Paystand and Neum and Rapid.
On today's special segment, we have Willy Schlacks of Equipment Share. Willy, can you talk about sectors or trends that you're bullish on?
Well, yeah. Besides construction, obviously, I'm bullish. That's where most of my activity is. As far as trends, I think now that AI has popped and gone through its Dunning-Kruger curve of, oh my God, it's going to save humanity, and then it's in the trough. I think we're going to start seeing a lot more innovation that actually is AI driven. And I think most of that's going to be driven because of the work that's actually being done in parallel on the human brain. Because most AI for the last 15 years has not been AI. It's just algorithms and people, call it AI. Even fairly advanced AI, it's still just algorithmic approaches. And it's just we have faster computers processing algorithms. It's like, great. Well, that doesn't really equal intelligence. But what's interesting about intelligence is accreted and increased when you mispredict the future. And that isn't a stunning statement to anybody in AI, but what it does mean is that you need a model and the ability to develop something that is just principle driven as opposed to algorithmic driven, where the algorithm is the principle. And I anticipate seeing a lot more of that starting to happen. And if that's true, it shouldn't be terribly long before we actually have the infancy of AI that is legitimately intelligence driven as opposed to algorithmic. So instead of adding processors to it, you actually add time and experience and increase the intelligence of that computer. So I'm really excited to see that happening because I think there's a lot of problems with humanity that they need intelligence. They don't need algorithms. Now, on the flip side, there's a lot of, fear around that with a lot of people who, well, in that case, what if bad actors get control of it and all that? And that's very valid. It's a bit unknown what that future looks like. Now, there was no fear with the previous AI algorithmic driven things because they actually were not that smart. They were just process hungry and we fed them with processors. But the future, if we can actually digitally replicate the way the brain learns, then that does open up a huge opportunity to solve some pretty difficult problems. But it also, it's with the whole thing with power. But that's been true of humanity forever to a certain extent. So those forces of evil, they do need to be counterbalanced with forces of good, which is why I'm so bullish on altruistic capitalism, because I think we win over the control wealth that is built through other means and methods. And we need more of it. So I'm, having grown up in a socialistic environment, I'm a little concerned with people leaning that direction too far because I live that. Like there's not a lot of progress that happens through that. It is not a dialectic. It is a controlled environment is the ultimate conclusion of that. George Orwell was spot on in his descriptions of the end state of those things. But I'm fairly optimistic that that's not going to happen. And, I really would love to propagate with our companies. And we have a lot of things that we do, altruistic capitalism. And, we have a takeoff, our venture fund, and then another seed stage venture fund. And the whole vision of those is to propagate billionaires. I want people to struggle to build wealth because on the other side of that, they'll distribute that wealth in very impactful ways and they'll do things with it that will change humanity. But yeah, as far as the cliff notes, I'm really interested in seeing the next wave of AI that's actually legitimately useful as opposed to the previous wave of nonsense. I shouldn't say nonsense. People will be furious with me for saying that, but whatever. You get the point.
I'm with you. I mean, the majority of AI pitches we've taken as a venture firm have been really just automation or algorithmic combinations, and they have not been true AI. So you and me both. I want to see it as well. That will conclude this installment of Investor Stories. If you're enjoying the program and would like to see it continue, take a moment and leave a 5-star review in iTunes. Okay, that will wrap things up for today. Until next time, over-prepare, choose carefully, and invest confidently. Thanks for joining me.